Okay, let's do this thing. Let's do it. You know what I want to do? I'm going to talk about some JoJo. That's what I want to do. I also, a couple things. First of all, I know absolutely nobody cares, but I have to mention my hair and just the fact that I have absolutely no idea what to do with it right now. It's in a very weird stage of growth because I've been just letting the bangs part kind of just grow and just, I don't know, seeing what I can do with it. It's a bit weird right now, not loving it, but kind of just I'm letting it go for a little bit more, seeing if I can, maybe after it grows a little bit more, if I can do something cool with it. But if not, then probably just gonna chop it off again. But that's the state of it right now. And then also, just wanted to kind of randomly mention that I have a sort of new way of doing audio. Just wanted to mention it because I thought it was pretty cool that OBS now has. I think they've had this for a while, but I just never experimented with it. It's individual application capture. So meaning instead of just capturing desktop audio, you can actually capture Spotify, Chrome, game audio, all that stuff on different audio outputs on OBS. Meaning you can separate them by track, and you can separate the outputs audio levels, like decibel levels. And that's really cool because one, it means during the actual stream, first of all, I can be doing things like watching a specific thing on a browser or checking my own stream and just different stuff like that I don't necessarily want to have captured on the stream just because it would be clashing. And I can just do that without worrying about it now because I can just mute the browser specifically but keep the Spotify audio going. Or vice versa, if I want to have music playing while I'm playing a game, but I don't really want to capture on stream, I don't know when I would want that, but I can do that, is the point. Or just as simple as keeping my game audio loud, but then turning down Spotify audio so it's not overpowering the game. Or the probably even bigger benefit is on the recording side of things, where during editing, the actual audio tracks can be adjusted individually. For something like a YouTube VOD or something like that, Spotify can just be muted. Meaning, if anything copyright-wise gets in the way, then I can do that, but still have any of the other audio that I want to be there. So, just really glad I found that feature, and I have it all set up on my Stream Deck specifically. I don't know, can't really show it on camera. It's won't reach, but I got a Stream Deck Plus recently, and so I have the Stream Deck on one side and the Stream Deck Plus on the other, and that thing has been really nice because if you haven't seen it, it has like knobs on it that you can use. Like it has a little screen and then some dials, and those really help with the functionality, especially of things like streaming software, even just generally. I have like Discord audio set on the knobs so that I can like turn people up and down as I need, or like I can go straight into the volume mixer. But on stream, obviously, that means just straight from here I can, you know, I can mute the mic if I want to. Just, or, you know, turn it down or anything like that. Anything that I need to do, just straight from here. I can mute the Spotify audio so you can't hear that. Turn it back on when I want to, turn it up, turn it down. It's great. It's great. Just great functionality. I love this thing. I have all of my streaming shortcuts are on here now, including like switching between, you know, the different scenes and stuff. So it's awesome. It's awesome. If you're a big sort of multitasker, you like having quick shortcuts to stuff, cannot recommend Stream Deck Plus enough. Stream Deck and Stream Deck Plus is a really nice combination if you can get it, but if you can only get one, I would probably say get the Plus. Just those knobs for volume purposes, excellent. So good. Anyway, we're going to be going over some JoJo today. JoJo Part 2. I did a manga club forever ago on Part 1, and finally I'm going to be talking about Part 2. I'm going to try to speed up on my output of these. I know that One Piece is going to be kind of a forever thing. Like I'm going to be making One Piece manga club for a long time now, but with JoJo, I think I can at least get through some of the earlier parts a little bit faster and get that out there. But yeah, so we're gonna do that. I was considering maybe playing some games afterwards, but to be honest, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that. It's already pretty late, and I do have to work at 10:30 in the morning. It's past midnight right now, so you know, if I can get to bed right after this, that might honestly be the best for me. Don't know if it would be super smart to keep staying up, but we'll see how I'm feeling. If I'm really feeling it, then you know, maybe. I haven't played a game on stream for a while, so would be nice. But it also helps that for manga clubs, I'm going to try to start being a bit more concise. I mean, I already talked before about how I'm doing smaller portions each time, you know, less chapters per stream. That doesn't apply for this, though. Just to mention, this was the last manga club outline that I wrote before I decided that I wanted to start doing shorter ones, and this was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, because I was just writing this and I was like, there's no way I'm fitting everything into this that I want to talk about. There's just too much. So that's why I was like, I'm gonna start doing like one volume per stream or something like that, because there's no way I'm just gonna continue doing this. Like I want to fit more in there, but I also want to be more concise and shorter with them. So just, yeah. Water here. I have been stockpiling on these. I am loving, I mean, this is just water, right? Normal kind of just water, but I've also been stockpiling on the different flavors of their like sparkling waters, and I'm probably going to try some of their tea soon. It's pretty good, but also just, you know, water is water. since I'm buying this brand anyway, I've been buying the water as well. Because, like, little secret, I'm great at drinking water. I don't drink enough. And so if I can kind of get kind of a hook to drink water if I'm already buying this anyway, and you know it's kind of silly and like fun because of the branding. If that can get me to drink more water, I'm gonna take it, you know? So, been buying and drinking many a liquid death. Anyway, we're gonna go ahead and get started on this. So I'm just going to go to the BRB screen just to get a good sort of segmentation between this intro and doing that. I think I'm gonna start doing that. It just feels more natural to start the like video intro when I'm going out of something like that rather than just going from normal talking into a YouTube intro, you know? So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go to a BRB screen, go over my notes one more time for like 30 seconds. Then we're gonna do the YouTube intro and get started. Sound good? Let's do it. That was the wrong camera. Hello everybody and welcome back to another installment of Manga Club. This is the series where I read through manga that I've never read before and I discuss it in videos like these. A long while back, a long while back, I made a video on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1, Phantom Blood, where I talked pretty positively about my experience with it. And so, of course, it was only a matter of time before I moved on to the next arc of that story. And that's what we're doing today. We're going to be talking about Part 2 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is titled Battle Tendency. Now, if you watched my last One Piece Manga Club stream, you may have seen me say that I was actually going to stop doing large chunks of arcs, and instead I was going to split it up into maybe 1-volume segments, and then only eventually bring it together into a larger video once all of the streams had been finished. It's not true for this one. This one is going to be the first 2 of 4 volumes. So, spoilers for chapters 1 through 36 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2, Battle Tendency, and only after this one, we're going to be doing smaller segmented streams. So, I'm ecstatic to talk about and to continue reading this part of JoJo. But first, I do think there's something we have to go over, which is that I had some very specific expectations and hopes while I was going into Part 2. And actually, I recorded a short video before I started Part 2. Specifically because I wanted to go back over what I was feeling at the time and just where I was at with the series, and talk about what I was thinking before I started reading Part 2. So what I think I'm going to go do now is bring up that video and let that play so that you can kind of hear what I was thinking at the time before I actually started the second part. So I have that up now. Give me a moment to get the audio ready for it. And I'm gonna just pause the music and let you guys hear what I was thinking going into JoJo's Part 2. Hey, so you're actually hearing past Cody right now. To be clear, I am recording this when I haven't yet read Part 2, because before I did, I just wanted to quickly give a little recap of my thoughts regarding the first part, Phantom Blood, and kind of what my expectations were going into this new sort of arc of JoJo. So yeah, Phantom Blood largely followed the rivalry between Jonathan and Dio, and so Phantom Blood largely followed the intense rivalry between Jonathan and Dio, and Dio was by far my favorite part of Part 1, because he was just pure evil on honestly such a shallow level that it somehow looped back into being really interesting. And on top of that, the very wacky personality of Baron Zeppeli was also a standout and a great catalyst for the most bizarre portions of the storyline. I don't know for sure if Dio makes a reappearance in this part, but based on the fact that he's, one of the fan favorites even to this day and has all these cosplays of outfits that I haven't seen in Part 1, I could take a good guess and say that he is probably going to come back, and uh, that makes me very happy. I mean, he proved pretty much nearly impossible to kill, so it makes sense that he would make a reappearance at some point, and I'm super looking forward to that. Now, unfortunately, JoJo himself and many of the other characters, like Erina, Tom Petty, they lacked either the characterization or development to be super interesting. But it was something I could pretty much overlook because of the amount of fun I was having just reading through the manga. And then another one of my minor complaints was the lack of diversity in the power system, the Haman. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was fine, but it was pretty much just really strong punches for the most part. Uh, that's almost always what it came down to. So the way it was utilized ended up kind of leaving me wishing a bit more was done with it. So, basically those are my main hopes for this second part of the story is I hope there's some more depth in the power system and there are some more interesting things explored in that avenue. And I also hope for just more interesting characters, or at least more uh, over the top, very interesting to read characters like Dio and Zappelli, people who really felt like they embodied the spirit of this manga and who were some of the only ones I felt did do that. So I just want more off the wall, bizarre storytelling. That was all my favorite parts of Phantom Blood. And being that Erina has a new baby on the way, I'm really excited to see who these new characters are and what they'll bring to the table. So I guess that's all I have for now. And yeah, I guess I'll talk to you when I'm done reading. I have no idea when that'll be for me, but for you, it'll be just in a couple seconds. Wow, very clever. He said it'll be just in a couple seconds. That was awesome. Um, so, um, yeah, as you could hear there, I had a lot of very, very mixed, I would say, things to say about part one. I enjoyed it, like I really enjoyed it, but clearly uh, I had a lot of caveats that came with that. I had to unpause the music. There we go. So that was kind of how all of part one was. It was a bit of a mixed bag. And the thing that I think blew me away the most about part two, like as I started it, because I knew that it would be in America, right? That part was pretty obvious. But you could also hear that I had a lot of interest in, oh, who are these new characters going to be? Because Erina has a baby on the way. So my expectation, I think rightfully so, was that we were going to follow Erina's children, basically, and see maybe them growing up and then them as young adults or whatever. But no, we start part two, and fairly quickly we learn those children that Erina brought to America are long gone. They, I guess, I think one of them died in the war. I'm trying to remember what the other one was, but the point is that they're not in the picture at all. And instead, we're introduced to Joseph Joestar, Erina's not son, but grandson. That was an interesting choice to me. 2 generations down, not just one. Because I guess previously to this, I had just assumed, because I knew that JoJo was a generational story, that each part would be the next generation down. So we get Jonathan's children, and then Joseph's children, and then, well, assuming that Joseph was Jonathan's child, then the next generation, then the next generation. But this opens up the possibility of skipping generations, which makes me wonder how far we're going to go. I know that I'm getting way ahead of myself. We're going to talk about part 2 here, but just very briefly thinking about future parts, because to be clear, I know next to nothing about future parts. It opens up the possibility that we jump multiple generations, meaning that this story that currently is taking place pretty far in the past is going to become more and more modern. And if we keep this trend of skipping generations, and who knows how many generations we may skip in certain parts, is it possible that this series actually eventually is going to be taking place in the future? That's something that I'm just in the back of my mind very curious about. Because up to this point, JoJo has essentially taken place in an alternate history. Somewhat our history, but obviously not entirely realistic. But if it goes far enough that it actually surpasses current day, then it'll be an entirely different kind of story. And even if it is in current day, that will lead to a very different style of backdrop, because as of right now, part 1 and part 2 are using historical backdrops that are very recognizable to place the narrative on top of. Small thing, but I thought it was worth mentioning, because then I can come back to this at a later date and see how right or wrong I was with this. But something else that I took note of when learning about the generation skip was that Joseph is the child of the 2 children that Anna brought to America. Which, I don't know. Are we? Is that ethically? Is that okay? Is that green flags all around? Are we? I don't know. Felt weird to me, but maybe that's just me. Maybe, I don't know. It's like not technically an incestual baby, but like, you know what I'm saying? But moving past just the birth origins of Joseph, I think it's pretty important that we actually talk about my thoughts on Joseph Joestar himself, as well as this new New York setting, and kind of interchangeably talking about the two, because I feel like both are integral to each other. Because, we're moving from these rural villages and old Victorian towns into a much bigger, bustling city, being New York. And the tone, therefore, is so much more kind of full of life and boisterous at all times. And accompanying that and complementing that is Joseph, because he fits into this new setting by also being much more full of life and much more boisterous than Jonathan was. Jonathan, to put it lightly, was a bit of a wet blanket. And Joseph is a loudmouth. You know, he's kind of rude. He jumps into things head first without really knowing what he's doing. He is full of sarcasm and jokes all the time. And it's just like so much more of an entertaining protagonist. Like, I cannot overstate that. Joseph Joestar is a million times the protagonist of Jonathan Joestar. And that was something that I feel like I kept reiterating about part 1 is I like it, but Dio is kind of the star of the show. Like, I loved the villain, but the protagonist I didn't care too much about. Absolutely not the case here. Joseph steals the show. He's so fun to read literally all the time. I love Joseph. I have nothing but praise for how Araki managed to up his game in this part. I am so happy about it because it's so refreshing to have a main character that I'm interested to know what he's gonna do, because it feels like he's not just always gonna do the expected sort of main character protagonist good guy thing. He's prone to he's prone to defying expectations, which is good, and I hope that continues moving forward. I'm a massive fan of his little gimmick that we get introduced to, the whole like your next line is going to be what you'll say next is. Oh my god, I'm so into it. I feel like I've seen a lot of memes featuring that phrase, and I understand why. It's so cool. It makes him feel so like, despite the fact that he is so naive and clearly not experienced, it still feels like he's on top of things. Great. Something else about Joseph and this setting is this is the 30s now. We got guns, like not like old like muskets, like Tommy guns. Like Joseph pulls out a Tommy gun, right? So immediately we have crazier weapons than before. We have such a contrast to the almost medieval weaponry that we focused on in Phantom Blood. And again, just as Joseph's personality defies more expectations, that also just everything about this part in the first few chapters is immediately just going against the grain of everything that part 1 was doing, while also building on top of the tone that made part 1 charming in the first place and refining it and making it so much more enjoyable. Even as far as the Haman goes, I'm liking Haman so much more in this part. I feel like it's becoming a little... It's a double-edged sword. It's becoming much more free form. There's basically no rules at this point. There are basically no rules for Haman at this point. You know, it's gone from sort of a mystical technique to focus your attacks into sorcery. Let's call it what it is. Hamon users are just sorcerers at this point. And I think on one hand, it means that Araki can always kind of just pull some new Hamon technique out of nowhere and use it as the solution for a problem, which does kind of feel maybe not like a cop-out, but like it lowers the stakes for a lot of situations, because you always know that there's going to be some new rule of Hamon or some new exception to a rule or something that means that they're going to be able to use Hamon for this. On the other hand, oh my god, it's so much fun. Like, Joseph using like the shot glass to reflect the shot back at Straitso, or what are they? He like uses it at one point to like straighten out a bunch of hairs, or to make a giant shield. Just sorcery. It's sorcery, and it's fun, but it's I don't know. I hope it gets refined in some way, because it is maybe a bit much to just give the characters this basically limitless power without almost any rules, unless the rules lead to a dramatic situation, in which case you can give it a rule. But then if the dramatic situation calls for them to win, then you could find an exception to the rule. It's, it doesn't feel that thought out. It feels pretty haphazard in a way, and just mainly concerned with plot convenience. But I do think that it is really cool. I love the trope of, and this is a sort of common trope, but I love it when there's like a newer generation of power system users or magic users or whatever the case may be, and it's clear that they are so much less trained and less experienced than the previous generation, but they still have the powers that the previous generation has, and they almost don't even have to try. Like, they just have it. Like, it's just normal for them now, but it's so much less refined because of that lack of training. And I like that so much, because it leaves room for development and kind of speculation about how much stronger this new generation really could be. And it really makes it feel like a new generation. It makes it feel like the bar has been raised in a way. Like the stakes, the game has changed. And I always just thought that was a lot of fun. Which, by the way, jumping a little bit forward into the part, we already got some of this payoff because of Lisa, and Caesar. But I'll get there. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Just to really quickly go over the first little arc with Straitso, I think it was good as an introduction to the new part, but I do think Straitso was maybe a little easily defeated and like not super interesting. It was definitely cool to see Speedwagon again and their interactions, and it was a bit unexpected to see the betrayal of Strato, but like, I don't know. He wasn't an excellent villain. But despite that, being able to be introduced to Joseph with him and get the setup for what comes next, you know, it was still a useful little arc to have. And, you know, just JoJo and Smokey's banter throughout this whole little arc. JoJo, I'll never get over JoJo hiding those grenades behind Strato's back. Like, that was definitely the highlight to me of this entire first bit of chapters, was just JoJo being like, haha, in the time that you somehow weren't paying attention, I have hidden, like, I don't know, like at least a dozen grenades behind your back. I have taken the time to somehow, like, meticulously strap them to your back where you have not noticed or felt them. Like, and I feel like that is the moment that makes it clear that this is a silly story. This is goofy. And it knows it. It knows it. And it works. I think it had me laughing out loud like multiple times during reading. And I think the reason that it works so well is for a couple reasons. For one, part one definitely had its fair share of silly moments. It did. But it didn't feel quite as aware of that. It felt like it played many of those silly moments pretty straight. And the reason that it was funny and the reason that it felt so silly is because it played itself so straight. Because you're just like, oh my god, this is such a ridiculous scenario. I can't believe, like, they're just, like, this is just happening like it's normal, right? What I think makes part 2 work really well is that it's like Araki realized that he was making a really dumb, like, story. Like, a really great story, but also a really dumb one. And I think he leaned into that in this part. There are so many more, not funny because it's bad, not funny because it's, you know, ridiculous, funny because it's trying to be funny, funny because it's, like, outlandish on purpose. So many more moments like that. And it works. It's like he has taken this thing about JoJo and fully realized it. And I am in love with it. It's so good. And then what helps that even more is that JoJo's fighting style is kind of a combination of, like, magic tricks with slapstick. And by the way, the fact that Joseph even points out at some point during this part that, you know, his fighting style was inspired by magicians was good confirmation, because it definitely felt like that, and getting that confirmation was just like a good, like, oh, okay, so Araki knows exactly what he's doing. These are meant to resemble, like, you know, street magician magic tricks. That's awesome. But because of that, because of the sort of cartoony way that Joseph fights, it lets just the average fight, the average day with Joseph, be wilder than, like, the standout wildest parts of part 1. Like, part 1 feels so tame compared to this now. And it was crazy because I thought it was so ridiculous at the time of reading, and now it's like, oh, part 1 is nothing now. Like, it might as well be like a normal, average, like nothing special fantasy story compared to part 2, because part 2 is just that insane. And it's, in the most positive way possible. Which, by the way, I think it should be noted that not even just in the comedy, because I mentioned that the comedy feels a lot more intentional this time, but I think that's something that carries over to basically the entire rest of the story as well. Is it feels like there's a lot more intentionality behind everything. There's a sort of confidence and looseness, I want to say, in Araki's writing that absolutely wasn't there in the previous part. It feels like he's getting a lot more comfortable with the feeling that JoJo evokes and using that with more intent. It feels like it is being directed in a way that Araki is very aware of this time, and I think he's getting more confident in JoJo's very, very particular tone. And even in terms of art, I think there's still some odd art from time to time. I think Araki was definitely still getting the hang of things in that department. Not gonna lie, there are some very awkward panels. There are some strange perspective issues sometimes. And when I say perspective issues, I don't mean in a way that feels exaggerated on purpose. I mean just like he didn't really know how to draw something from this angle. Things like that. That must be said. However, even the art does feel more confident, and it feels like it has gotten an upgrade with a lot more bold choices for a lot of the panels. And especially the posing, which in Phantom Blood, only towards the end did we kind of start seeing a bit of the very dramatic, JoJo posing that JoJo is known for. But this time, right from the get-go, it's in full force. The JoJo posing is strong. And as I said, it's a bit rough. There's definitely some awkwardness to it that I have a feeling will get refined later on, but it's here, and it is here in a way that exudes more confidence. But all that to say, Straighto's fight is decent. It's just decent. It's alright. But what really matters about it is what comes next, because the basically entire point of Straighto's fight with Joseph was to bring vampires back into the picture and to set up for the Pillar Men and the Nazis. And this, in my opinion, is where the story gets even crazier, and where it feels like, for lack of a better way of putting it, the story really starts. First, I just want to talk about the whole Nazi subplot. I did not expect any kind of Nazi involvement in this story, let alone them being like almost a central part of the story, although I guess it makes sense considering this is like in the mid to late 30s. So okay, I guess that makes the stretch here makes sense as much as something in this series can make sense. But it is interesting in the way that it showed me how much more sprawling this part would be. I feel like part 1 was relatively contained, whereas, you know, not even like a quarter of the way through part 2, and we've traveled from New York to Mexico. Like, I love stories with varied settings that explore different backdrops. So that immediately made me pretty excited. Got me hyped. Now, the Nazis in Mexico are basically the catalyst for the entire story even happening, because they're the ones who decide to experiment on the Pillarmen very smartly. It was a great idea on their part. Suzuya, hello, what's going on? I think, and I don't know how intentional this was, but I do think there's something to be said about, you know, the Nazis being this role in the story. It's this group of people who are so assured of their own superiority, so assured of their so-called place on the food chain, right? That, like, they can't even comprehend or plan properly for a being that is totally, like, clearly above them. I think it kind of speaks to, like, the hubris there, right? And I don't know. I think you could probably, if you spent some time, I think you could probably pull some more deep thoughts out of that, I guess. But just on a basic level, I did think that was an interesting alignment. And I guess even in general, just going back to other parts of the story before this, the way that just general humanity's arrogance and bigotry is interspersed with the hubris of man seems to be kind of a reoccurring theme. You know, there were, like, racist villain characters pretty much right away, and so Araki clearly isn't shying away from that, and it seems to be almost one of the central themes of the villains this time around is intolerance and hubris. And just the inability to kind of the narcissism of bigotry, I guess. The inability to see other people or other groups as peers rather than underlings. Is any of this making sense? I don't know. It's just something I picked up on. Speaking of arrogant, by the way, we got to talk a little bit about one General von Stroheim, because he has quite a bit of a little story arc here. Not sure how I feel about it, just to be honest. I don't know how I feel about his little bit of character development, because he starts out as malevolent and detestable as you would expect from a character like this, but he gets a semi-redemption, I guess, where he martyrs himself in the fight against Santana. By the way, just a quick note, I'm going to be calling him Santana during this. In the actual official translation of the manga, he was referred to as Santiago, I want to say. But every online source says that he's actually supposed to be called Santana, but it was just copyright concerns that made the translators change it. And apparently that's a thing that comes up again and again in JoJo. Not looking forward to it. I hate having to like look online to find out what the real names for things are. I hate reading One Piece and having to constantly read Zolo, stuff like that. It just kind of comes with the territory, I guess, with translated works of art. I think that barrier is always going to be an issue, but especially with something like this, where that kind of classic rock and just general music influence is so central to a lot of the characters. I think it kind of sucks that the translations don't really represent that accurately a lot of the time, but it is what it is. I guess I'll just have to get used to it. Anyway, I was talking about the way that General von Stroheim gets a bit of a redemption and martyrs himself, and this, as well as some of the scenes later on, specifically with Caesar's friend Mark, who is also a Nazi, is there some of the only things that I dislike about this part so far. Like, actually dislike. The manga tries really, really hard to like humanize and empathize with these Nazi characters, and it's only in these specific instances, but you know, it still does it. I don't know if Araki just wanted to try to write a more complex story or more complex characters and just show that maybe he was capable of doing that, and less one-dimensional characters, maybe. I'm sure that's what it was, but it just comes across as unnecessary, I think. I don't really think there was a need for that, especially the fact that it happens multiple times. It's just like, you don't need to do that. We know. You don't need to do that. So hopefully that doesn't come up again. I hope not, because like I said, some of the only stuff that I'm like, I'm not a fan of this time around. I have in my notes here that Joseph even comments about like respecting von Stroheim when he dies, despite their difference in worldview, and just like, oh man, well, you know, despite everything, gotta respect that dude. And I wrote down that, you know, as the saying is something like, no, Joseph, you don't gotta hand it to the Nazis. But anyway, just a bit of a small rant. Let's get back to the awesome things about this part, because there are way more of those. Such as the Pillar Man. So, something about the Pillar Men is that they have some of the most blatant and hilarious referenced names out of any character yet, right? We have Cars and Wamu. Kind of sound like they could be just regular names, right? Kind of. Almost. You could definitely read that and not pick up that they're musical references. Still good, but not like the most blatant ever, I guess. But when I tell you that my jaw dropped when I read the name AC/DC, ACD, the villain's name, the bad guy's real name in this manga is AC/DC. Like, I feel like I just have to spend some time on that, because, like, oh my god. It's great. Ugh. Anyway, despite the absurdity of that, the Pillar Men are really cool. They're clearly extremely powerful, very intimidating, but you know, they also have this, I don't know, almost like homoerotic, kind of very sexual energy about them. I mean, they're all like giant, buff, half-naked dudes, and they all like do like bodybuilder poses together and stuff. I feel like that, like, it's it feeds into this part just in general feeling like a bit more, I guess, flamboyant than part one, which is saying something. I guess just a quick note that, like, I feel like I feel like yeah, what do you say? Agar Danish. I am talking about part 2 of JoJo. Dio is the villain in part 1, but I'm talking about part 2 right now. I loved Dio though. Dio was awesome. Anyway, I feel like I know that this fandom, like, just the JoJo fandom in general, I feel like it has a lot of like queer people in it. And with this, I guess, bold display of like very sexually charged characters, like open sexuality and like just general, I guess, gender non-conformity and stuff. If stuff like that keeps up, then I can definitely understand how that would happen with the fandom, right? So yeah, I think Pillarmen are great. They also they balance out the silliness of this part, because what they do is they bring in like some of the, not even some of, just the most grotesque body horror that has been in this series so far. Let's see, Santana contorts the first time you meet him, and he breaks his bones and his body apart to go through these small spaces. He possesses the body of others and bloats them and turns them into these weird zombies. One of them at one point like deflates an entire group of people's insides like they're balloons, and they like lay across the floor like a banner. Phantom Blood had a lot of horror influence, right? It definitely did. And I feel like that's carried over to this part, but it's almost like it's influenced by a different subgenre of horror, because Phantom Blood felt kind of like an old vampire story with like dark castles, big silhouettes in the distance of old English architecture and English villages and these gothic elements. Whereas the Pillarmen in part 2 bring more of a science fiction, like a science fiction horror element to the story. That reminds me of, you know, stuff like The Thing, Body Snatchers, and stuff like that. That is a bit more cosmic in nature, I guess. A bit more scientific, if you want to call it that. But it's cool. I really like it. Almost Cronenberg-esque, I guess you could say. So Santana is a great stepping stone because he gets us used to this new threat level, but is pretty much nothing compared to the other three. He's dealt with in a way that is making it clear he's a bigger threat than Straizo or Dio. But he's out of the story in enough time that it's clear he's not the main threat. I also think JoJo gets some really good character moments in his initial encounter with Santana. He tries almost bantering with him, you know, he tries talking to him before fighting with him, and I think it just shows a lot of his personality in a way that's funny, but also feels really sweet, I guess. You know, JoJo's the only person out of everyone who even considers that there could be like a non-violent solution. And in this way, I think there's this little thread. Even though Joseph is, for all intents and purposes, the polar opposite of Jonathan, I think little moments like that show that there is this thread that has carried through the Joestars of a kind of purity of heart and just a willingness to see the best in others. So I'm glad, and assuming that was intentional, I'm impressed that despite Joseph's complete departure in terms of personality and demeanor, that little bit still carries over. Now, as far as the fight with Santana, the thing that's important about that fight is that his death is what gives us the info about the other three Pillarmen. Before this, we didn't really know there were others, it was just Santana. However, with Stroheim's death and his last message to Joseph, we learn that Joseph's going to have to go to Rome, and the fact that there are three other Pillarmen to worry about, and that Santana is the tutorial level for them. I think, speaking of the three other Pillarmen, Wamu, Cars, and AC/DC, I can't believe it's just like a normal thing to say that, but it is. Those three are definitely the best antagonists of the part so far. I imagine we'll be with them till the end of it. They seem like they're going to be the final boss of part 2. I think they all have their little quirks that make them interesting. Like, you know, Wamu, he doesn't like his shadow stepped on. He like lashes out when he gets his shadow stepped on. It's weird. There are these little weird things. Cars seems a lot more experienced than the others. He seems kind of like the leader. He's a lot more focused, a lot less willing to go on little side tangents, and he's very focused on their goal. which their goal is something called the Redstone of Aja. This is kind of the central item that we've been focusing on in this last part of the story. It's what introduces us to the idea that apparently there used to be some kind of Haman tribe, and the Pillarmen were rivals to this tribe. And these red stones of Aja are stones that make the stone masks more powerful. But this specific stone is like the most perfect version of this kind of stone, meaning that it will reflect the sunlight in a perfect way to create the most powerful stone mask that is possible to make. And that is what the Pillarmen are after. So that is kind of that's our end goal. That is our thing that we have to protect, to keep the Pillarmen from becoming all powerful. So, and then in addition to this, Wamu and AC/DC's poison rings, it felt like a pretty significant threat. They added some immediate stakes to make JoJo kind of have to get a bit more serious about things. He doesn't lose his jokey personality, but this is the first time that it actually dawns on him, and I guess us as the reader, that he's going to have to train. He's not just going to be able to kind of float by on pure instinct. He's going to have to figure this out and figure out how to beat the Pillarmen. So that, along with the talk about Rome and the references to the Haman tribe and the Redstone of Aja, all of this leads us over to Caesar and Lisa in Italy. So the kind of last third, I would say, of this half of the part had to do with Caesar and JoJo's training with Lisa. I expected some kind of training or power improvement, but I didn't really expect any specific way. I didn't know how it would happen. I thought maybe there would be some kind of Haman upgrade, some kind of second form, almost like a Super Saiyan, but for Haman. Just was my basic guess. But I really am enjoying what we're getting with this. I think Caesar emphasizes JoJo's lack of training and is the catalyst for his training to begin, because it creates kind of a friendly rival that JoJo can compare himself to, meaning that there is now a direct reason or a direct drive for Joseph to want to improve, because now he wants to be better than Caesar, obviously. I think it's also just a really wonderful friendship that's blooming. You know, from starting out nearly hating each other, just trying to get one-ups on each other, to now very clearly starting to respect each other and having mutual struggles, and maybe starting to one-up each other in positive ways, you know, helping each other out, helping each other to reach their maximum potentials. in a way that feels really cool. I'm just very happy that JoJo is getting an actual like partner, basically. It's really awesome. It's just a personal note. JoJo and Caesar are in a relationship. Nobody can tell me there aren't vibes there. That is all. Anyway. So, that aside, I think Lisa is also a cool character so far. I think it's cool to have a woman as one of the central characters finally in a series that so far has been filled with beefy boys. You know, she's very competent, super confident, clearly a respectable source of power. It's a little, I don't know if it's surprising, but it is nice to see in a 80s publication in a shonen manga, you know what I mean? She's definitely a bit cold and hasn't shown a whole lot of different sides of herself, but I think she makes it clear that it's because her training methods work. They either make or break you. Which, you know, it's very obvious in the super harsh, unforgiving first trial that JoJo and Caesar have to go through, called the Hell Climb Pillar. Literally like a giant thing, a giant tube covered in oil that they have to climb up just with Haman. It was insane. They were in there for what, like I can't even remember exactly how long they were in there. Like days, definitely days. I have it in my notes somewhere. Hell climb pillar. Let's see. Okay, Caesar took 61 hours to get up the pillar. And this is while they're like the whole time like holding on to it and not eating or anything. Apparently Haman makes you not have to eat. That's another, see that, like how I was talking about, like Haman is just sorcery now. There's basically no rules. You could just invent new rules for it. Haman users don't have to eat. Okay, sure. Okay. We didn't know about that until now. But now that it's relevant, I guess we know about it. It's dumb, but whatever. Regardless of that, really impressive, but also very like, it kind of just shows the fact that like even that isn't enough. Like that's the start of the training. And that's the level that our characters are going to have to be on to compete with the Pillar Men. It's wild. Need some Joestar yoga books? Totally. I don't know what kind of stretches you would have to do to be able to do some of the things they're doing. To like have like a year-long warm-up. Win. Hello. What's going on? So, after this whole training section, this initial experience that they have to go through, this is when we learn about Lisa being the current defender of this Redstone of Aja, tying everything together. because obviously that's what the Pillarmen are after. So now we know where the Red Stone of Aja is, or at least who it is with, and we know that the Pillarmen are after it, so clearly these two are going to clash. We get another callback to the Haman tribe, and apparently it's kind of a tradition to have someone defend this stone and pass it on to the next person to defend it, and Lisa is just the current defender of the stone in a long line of defenders of this stone. But apparently it can't be destroyed. Like, it can't just be gotten rid of. She says this when Joseph suggests it, which isn't even really that dumb of a suggestion. Like, why don't we just, like, get rid of the stone forever and then the Pillarmen can't use it? But she says it can't be. She says they literally cannot be defeated if they destroy it. Don't know why. They don't explain why. I don't know if it's like a literal, like, functional, like they somehow will become impossible to defeat without this stone, or if it's just kind of a long tradition thing where it's been defended for so long. It's this symbol of the tribe, and they just don't want to get rid of it. Either way, doesn't look like we're getting rid of this stone. So, after all of this, after all the training, after the introduction to the Pillarmen, after JoJo finally managing to get up the Alcline Pillar and the training truly beginning, this is when AC/DC finally makes his comeback, shows back up in the story to fight JoJo. Specific reason was the poison ring, because Joseph was told to, or I guess Joseph was the one who suggested, Joseph basically challenged AC/DC to fight him after a matter of days had passed. And if JoJo won the fight, then AC/DC would have to take the... No. It wasn't that he had to take the off. It was, if JoJo could beat AC/DC in a fight, then he could take the antidote from AC/DC. Which was his lip ring, I guess. It's painful. But anyway, this final showdown is great. I feel like it's a culmination of all of the elements of the story that have been introduced to us so far. With JoJo's new training, and that along with his usual just kind of really creative, wacky problem solving, the the wires that he ties around all of the footholds that AC/DC uses, the back and forth shot calling, where Joseph says what AC/DC is going to do next, but then AC/DC knows and he says what Joseph is going to do next, and then Joseph actually knew what he's going to... It's wild. It's so fun to read. And the general just insane power of the Pillarmen, their disgusting abilities, with AC/DC using his veins as weapons, having them jut out of his body like tentacles. Disgusting, but so cool. It just all comes together into this single final fight that that wraps everything up nicely for this first half of the part. That being said, it's clear that this isn't actually the finale. I mean, we know that because I'm only halfway through the part, but ACDC is like clearly still alive at the end, right? He is a bundle of nerves that is clinging on to Joseph's back without Joseph's knowledge. And it's unclear if he can regenerate or what's going to happen there. So it's a really nice cliffhanger, is what I'll say. It's a nice way to end off this half and get me excited to read the second half of this part. And that's it. That's it for this half. I am going to have this new little segment where I go over my dislikes and highlights at the end of everything, so that I can just go over some things that maybe didn't fit into the rest of the general flow of the story. So, as for my dislikes this time, I already mentioned too much Nazi sympathizing. It's just too much. The kind of positive and negative, the art not getting a whole lot better, but still getting a lot more ambitious. Awkward, but good direction. So I can't really complain too much about it. And also kind of the negative and positive, I've already been talking about it throughout this. But the Haman not really having any rules anymore. Like, it apparently there are rules, but there aren't really rules. And, you know, Haman users are battle mages. So, kind of a negative, kind of a positive. Positive because it's fun, negative because I don't know how much longer you can do something like that and have it be interesting. Those are my dislikes. Not a whole lot of them. Didn't dislike a whole lot about this so far. My highlights. Better drip this part. JoJo, even in part 1. You know, the characters had some good drip. There was some fun style choices being made. But that's even elevated in this part. I think it's a lot of the characters just dress really cool. The villain designs are awesome with the Pillar Men. Like, yeah, super good. Shout out to the dumbass move names. I love them. We have things like, I mean, some of the highlights to me were Space Ripper Stingy Eyes from Straizo, and then Meat Invade. Just bonkers, and I love it. And then just general Joseph shenanigans. I love Joseph. I already talked about it, but like the whole scene with the dress and, you know, sneaking into the Nazi base, his stupid little clacker balls that he insists on using and actually end up working pretty well, to his credit. All of the like Looney Tunes goofy stuff that he does, just absolutely defying any kind of real world logic and just going full cartoon world. I have in my nose his stupid line where he goes, "Guess I'm a polygamist now." I just like some of his lines felt like there should have been like a laugh track after them or something. Just so stupid. I love Joseph. So that's it for my dislikes and highlights. Now the very last thing I'm going to go over is some of my expectations and my hopes for the second half of part 2. So Joseph already got the antidote, so that problem is pretty much taken care of. However, clearly something that is something that is becoming clear is that the Pillarmen can cling on to life even harder than you would expect them to be able to. So, I don't know how they're going to get rid of them. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Because, like, bro is a bundle of nerves right now. And he's still not dead. So, I don't know. I don't know what you do against that. So I'm really just, like, anticipating finding that out. I imagine Cars is probably going to be the most troublesome to fight, just because he seems like the big bad. He seems like the most serious. He seems like the most experienced. So one of my expectations is that he's going to be the one that sticks around to the end and is the last one to be defeated. I'm wondering why the Red Stone of Aja can't be destroyed, as I mentioned before. And I don't know if I expect an answer or not. I hope we get an answer, but I don't know if I expect it. And then finally, a hope and an expectation, because I think it's destined to happen, but I'm also extremely looking forward to it, is Joseph and Caesar just being the sickest, like, Haman fighting duo now that they're training together and everything. I think there are going to be some incredible, like, 2v2, 2v3 fights, some fun little, like, team attack type stuff happening. So looking forward to it. I know it's going to happen, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm just looking forward to see where the rest of the story goes in general. I'm really enjoying this part. I cannot overstate enough how much more I'm enjoying this compared to part 1. This is an upgrade in every single conceivable way, and I am fully hooked on JoJo now. I feel like I can officially call myself a JoJo fan now. Like, part 1 was I enjoyed it. It was fun. There were things that I loved about it. There were things that I didn't care for. But overall, I enjoyed it and was optimistic about the rest of the series. Now, I'm so into it. I am loving this series. So, looking forward to reading the rest. I'm gonna go read the rest of this part as soon as humanly possible, so I can come back here and talk more about my thoughts. But that is all I have for today, so that is going to be it for this edition of Manga Club. Let's see, where do I be? I will be back at some point with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2, chapters 37 through 49. That is if you're reading the current publication of the manga, that's the 3rd volume. And that's what I'm going to be talking about next time. But for now, that's all I have. So I just want to thank anybody who is still watching. I want to thank anybody who has been in the live chat, and remind anybody who's watching the VOD or the video version of this that I do, in fact, do Manga Club live, and that if you want to join in on the audience, you can do that on my YouTube or Twitch channel. So I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you in any future Manga Club videos. But for now, once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Goodbye. Alright, so that was it for the YouTube intro, or outro. Now the real question is, it's almost 2 a.m. Do I want to play something? I don't know. Might be a little too late for that. I don't know. See, what I was gonna do is I was gonna play some either Strive or Tekken, because I've gotten into Tekken recently. Tekken's really fun, by the way. If you haven't played Tekken, super fun, super hard. That's a difficult game. But one of those two, because those are kind of at the moment like my main fighting games. I've loved Strive forever. Since it came out, I've played Strive. But Tekken I'm just getting into. But those are kind of my two mainstays at the moment. I think probably sometime, I don't know when, hopefully soon, but I kind of want to get on the Uni 2 train, the new Under Night in Birth. That looks fun. And to be honest, I think that Under Night seems more my style than Melty Blood. But I played more Melty Blood type Lumina when it came out because it was just more active than Uniclear. It just had more hype around it, more of a community, more stuff going on. But now that Uni 2 is like the newest thing, and it just came out, it's probably going to have, newer quality of life and accessibility and stuff that you would expect from a newer fighting game. Probably going to hop into that, because, yeah, Uni is a bit more, I'm a bit more into that than I am Melty. Obviously, they're both pretty similar, because they're both made by the same studio, but like, I think Uni has, generally speaking, more interesting character designs, and I think just the flow of the game, I enjoy it more. It seems a bit more technical to me. Melty is like, I don't doubt that the like ceiling for Melty is high, but the floor is almost too low. Like it felt like, especially because there are auto combos. I don't know how previous Melty Bloods were. I never played any of them. But in Type Lumina, there are auto combos. So I felt like I could kind of just hop into matches and mash and like be fine. And I don't like that. I don't like being able to win without actually understanding what I'm doing. Because one, that means that other people can also do that. Which means that I could lose to noobs. I am a noob, by the way, but point is, like, I can lose to people who like don't necessarily know what they're doing if I'm not on like a higher level, and I don't like that. But also, it lowers the incentive to like truly improve, because it's like, oh, I can just smash most of the time and be fine. I think that's true in a lot of games. I think mashing can get you kind of out of beginner levels, but I kind of refuse to do that. Like, I just won't do it. I want to, if I'm learning a game, I want to learn it. I want to know what I'm doing. I want to be able to play my character the way that is actually conducive to improving in the game. And Melty made it possible to kind of just play all the characters the same because you could just auto combo and it would just do, obviously probably not optimal combos, but like combos that could get you through a match. And I can't really explain what I don't like about that. I just don't like that. It just felt really scrubby. It just felt like really, really, really low skill floor. And I think I prefer games with at least a little bit more than that. I mean, let's be honest, Strive is also a very easy game in terms of like the beginner level. But there's like a base level of understanding you have to have of the system mechanics and how to use Gatlings and stuff like that. With Melty, it was just nothing, and therefore I guess it just didn't keep me hooked as well. I don't know if there are auto combos in the new Uni, but there certainly weren't in Uniclear. It felt a bit more. The skill floor felt a bit higher, and I think that's one of the things I liked about it. Because like. Another thing is I like precise controls. I like pressing a button and knowing that it will always do this thing. And with Melty, it's like what if I don't want to start the auto combo? What if I just want to press the light attack a bunch of times in a row? Can't really do that because it'll just start the auto combo. It's like I want those precise controls over my character. I don't know if any of this makes sense. I don't know. I feel like I'm crazy. But that's just how it is. I don't know. I don't know if I want to play anything right now or not. Definitely probably gonna try to get more into some of the Evo games. They just recently announced all the games that are going to be at Evo. Got SF6. The only reason I'm not into SF6 right now is because it's expensive. I can only buy so many full price games in a row. Tekken 8 was like, basically it was like, am I going to buy Street Fighter or am I going to buy Tekken? And Tekken is way newer, and it's also way newer to me. Because I've played SF5 a decent bit. Did not play Tekken 7 very much. I feel like I played like 2 matches of Tekken 7 ever. So I was like, Tekken 8 is going to be something different. I want to get that one. Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising. That has a free-to-play version, doesn't it? Might have to try that. I don't know. Under Night 2. MK1. I'm not going to play that. I don't care about Mortal Kombat. I'm sorry. I do not care about Mortal Kombat almost at all. I don't know why. It just doesn't interest me. I already play Strive. KOF 15. It's like, it's right on the line for me where like I'm interested, but I don't know if I'm interested enough to pick it up instead of one of these other games. Because it's like, there's only so much time I could spend on these things. So I gotta decide how I want to allocate that time. And then Third Strike, yeah, no thanks. Third Strike, to me, is an extraordinarily cool looking game that is so fun to watch. But I'm not gonna play it myself. Because to me, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not tournament ready. I am very scrubby. I am not great at fighting games. But at the very least, I want to get into games where I feel like I can sort of climb a competitive ladder. That's not happening in Third Strike. I'm just like, let's just be honest here. People have been playing Third Strike for so long. Everybody who plays that game is like starting at a level so much higher than I would start at. So that's probably not gonna happen. All the others are possibilities, but I will say I do want to get into SF6 at some point, probably. Might get into Grand Blue. I definitely think I want to get into Under Night. I think, sometime in the next few months, I want to pick up Under Night, and I want to learn it. I want to put some time into learning that game. Because it just looks super fun. And I was going to get it at some point, but the reviews on Steam were bad because apparently the netcode was broken. But I guess they're fixing that, so maybe I'll get it soon. Probably going to start practicing specifically on stream as far as like Tekken and stuff goes. Because why not? It would be cool to have like some document my progress. But it's almost 2 a.m. I'm definitely just gonna go to bed. I would like to play some Tekken on stream soon, though. I think that could be fun. I think that could be pretty fun, even though I'm a scrub. Even though it'll be very embarrassing for everybody to see how bad I am and how little I know about the game. It happens. It is what it is. I'm gonna head out of here. I'm gonna go get ready for bed, I think. Thanks for showing up. Anybody who's still in here, anybody who's been participating in the live chat or anything like that, I appreciate it. It's been fun. I'm gonna read more JoJo soon. Peace out.